3 weeks ago, a man walked into a dealership in Milton Keynes with £28,000 ready to spend. The salesman showed him a 2-year-old Tesla Model 3. The original price was £44,000. The asking price was £26,000. He rang that evening, convinced he had found a bargain. He had not found a bargain. He had found a trap. And in 2026, that trap is set for almost every car buyer in Britain, regardless of what they are buying, how they are paying, or how carefully they think they have done their research. This is not a story about electric versus petrol. This is the story of 5 converging forces that have created the worst conditions for buying a car in this country in 30 years. And the people who are supposed to help you buy one have every financial incentive to make sure you never understand what those forces are. Start with depreciation, because it is the foundation on which everything else is built. Everyone knows a new car loses value the moment it leaves the forecourt. That is not news. What is happening right now is something different in scale and in speed. A petrol car bought new in 2020 loses roughly 15 to 20% of its value in the first year. An electric vehicle bought new in 2023 loses between 35 and 45%. Some models have hit 50% inside 24 months. That Tesla in Milton Keynes depreciated £18,000 in 2 years, £9,000 per year, vanishing into nothing. More than most British households spend on their total annual car running costs. The previous owner was financially destroyed by that car. And here is the trap that the excited buyer in Milton Keynes had not seen. When you buy that car for £26,000, you are not inheriting someone else's depreciation and escaping your own. You are inheriting theirs and beginning yours. Because the depreciation curve on electric vehicles is not flattening. It is accelerating. Every time a manufacturer releases a new model with 50 more miles of range and 30 minutes off the charge time, every older model in the country drops in value overnight. You are not buying transport, you are buying technology. And technology becomes obsolete before most people have finished paying for it. But that is not the real problem. The real problem is what has happened to the supply side of the used market simultaneously. Fleet operators who acquired electric vehicles in 2022 on favorable tax arrangements are offloading them now because those arrangements changed. Corporate lease returns are arriving in volume. Private buyers who purchased during the lockdown years are trying to exit before values fall further. Supply has exploded. Demand has not kept pace. That is not a market correction. That is a depreciation death spiral with no visible floor. Now look at the finance. The average car finance term in the United Kingdom right now is 60 months, 5 years. Interest rates that sat at around 3% in 2021 have climbed to 8 or 9% across most mainstream lending products. Walk into any dealership and they will show you a monthly payment figure. £450 a month for that £26,000 Tesla. Sounds manageable. Sounds like a reasonable portion of a monthly income. That is precisely how it is designed to sound. Run the arithmetic. £450 a month times 60 months is £27,000. You are paying £27,000 for a car listed at £26,000. Before the deposit, the arrangement fee, and the payment protection insurance that the finance manager will present as compulsory. But what happens next is where people get destroyed. 3 years into the agreement, you have paid £13,500. You still owe £13,500. But the car, depreciating at the current rate for electric vehicles, is worth £12,000. You are in negative equity. You cannot sell without writing a check to clear the remaining balance. You cannot part exchange without rolling the shortfall into your next loan and compounding the problem. You cannot afford to keep it, and you cannot afford to leave it. You are trapped. Dealerships structure these agreements around the monthly figure because that is the number most buyers evaluate. The total repayment figure, the settlement terms, and the negative equity risk across the depreciation curve do not appear on the brochure. The monthly payment appears on the brochure. Most people say yes to the monthly payment without running the total numbers. Most people are in negative equity within 3 years and have no idea until the moment they try to get out. Then there is government policy. The timing here is specific, and it is brutal. The ban on new petrol and diesel sales has moved several times. It was 2030, then 2035, then 2030 again. It is currently settled at 2030. Possibly, depending on who forms the next government. That uncertainty is killing residual values across both ends of the market simultaneously. Buy a petrol car now, and you are placing a bet that it will remain desirable, insurable, and legally viable to drive in 10 years. Perhaps it will. Perhaps road pricing schemes, registration surcharges, and clean air zone charges will make combustion engine ownership prohibitively expensive before the decade ends. Nobody knows. Buy an electric vehicle, and you are betting that public charging infrastructure will mature, battery replacement costs will fall, and the technology will not be superseded before you have finished paying for it. Perhaps it will. Perhaps the solid-state batteries currently in late-stage development will make everything on the road today look like an early mobile phone. You are gambling either way. But here is the specific 2026 problem that sits beneath both of those bets. The plug-in car grant that offered buyers up to £3,000 off eligible electric vehicles is gone for the vast majority of models. In 2023, the government was subsidizing your purchase to accelerate the transition and hit its own emissions targets. In 2026, those subsidies have largely been withdrawn. You are paying full price for a car that the person before you bought with a government contribution. And when you come to sell, the person after you will expect the price to reflect that there is no longer any grant available. You bought at the top of the subsidy cycle, and you will sell at the bottom of it. Insurance is the cost nobody models until the quote comes back. Average car insurance premiums across the United Kingdom have risen 68% in the last 2 years. Some demographics have seen increases exceeding 100%. Young drivers in urban areas are paying between £3,000 and £5,000 a year before they have turned a wheel. Electric vehicles make the problem worse, with expensive bodywork, proprietary parts and limited aftermarket supply, and battery packs that change the entire economics of a write-off threshold. A Tesla Model 3 insurance quote for a 30-year-old driver with a clean license in London currently runs between £2,000 and £2,800 per year. The man in Milton Keynes had not thought about insurance when he was sitting in the test drive. When he ran the quotes, his total monthly cost jumped from £450 to £660. The car that had seemed affordable was no longer affordable, not because the finance terms had changed, but because one cost he had not modelled had altered everything. Insurance costs are not coming down. Repair costs are rising. Theft rates on certain electric vehicle models are climbing sharply. Insurers are withdrawing from unprofitable segments. The companies that remain are pricing the risk accordingly. Factor in a further 20 to 30% increase across the term of any 5-year finance agreement, because the trajectory is clear and it is not reversing. Charging is the other problem, and this one cuts through all the marketing about running costs. If you own a house with a driveway, you can install a home charger, charge overnight on an off-peak tariff, and your per-mile energy cost is genuinely lower than petrol. The economic case for electric ownership is real under those conditions. If you live in a flat, a terraced house without off-street parking, or anywhere that a private charging installation is impossible, you are dependent on public infrastructure. The public infrastructure economics are not what the manufacturer's brochures suggest. Public rapid chargers currently cost between 60 and 85 pence per kilowatt-hour at most motorway and retail park locations. A full charge on a typical family electric vehicle at those rates costs between £40 and £50. You have not eliminated your fuel cost. You have approximately replicated it, while adding the variables of availability, queue times, and out-of-service units. The charging rollout the government promised is happening, slowly. It is too slow for the volume of electric vehicles arriving on British roads. Private operators are building infrastructure at the price points a captive market will sustain. You are not buying energy independence. You are buying dependency on infrastructure you do not control, maintained by companies whose obligation to you ends at the legal minimum. All of it converges in 2026 in a specific way that makes this year unlike any other in recent automotive history. We are in what economists would call a transition valley. Petrol cars are declining in long-term desirability, but still dominate the used market in volume. Electric vehicles are improving in capability, but have not reached price parity, infrastructure maturity, or residual value stability. You are being asked to buy into either a technology in managed decline or a technology still finding its floor. Manufacturers know exactly where we are. That is why the deals look attractive. The offers exist because the market is soft. Buyers are hesitant and inventory needs to be moved. When buyers are hesitant, values fall. When you are persuaded to buy during a period of falling values, you begin your ownership at the wrong point on the curve. In 3 years, battery technology will have advanced materially, charging speeds will have improved, and the range will have extended. Every vehicle purchased in 2026 will look like an earlier generation product relative to what is then available. In 3 years, the used petrol market will be flooded with sellers trying to exit ahead of the 2030 new car ban. Values will compress. Competition between sellers will intensify. Buyers will have leverage they do not have today. You are buying at the peak of uncertainty and the trough of value. The dealerships will not tell you this. They have monthly targets and forecourt inventory that needs clearing before the quarter closes. The finance companies will not tell you, because the interest on a 60-month agreement at 9% is exactly the product they are selling. The manufacturers will not tell you, because they are managing fleet transition timelines and emissions compliance obligations that have nothing to do with your financial well-being. Every party in the transaction has a financial incentive to complete it. Not one of them has a financial incentive to tell you to wait. The man from Milton Keynes did not buy the Tesla. He bought a 6-year-old Honda Civic for £8,000 cash. No finance, no depreciation cliff, no negative equity trap sitting 3 years down the road. Boring, reliable, cheap to insure and cheaper to run than anything with a touchscreen and a charging port. In 3 years, when this market finds its floor, that Civic will still be worth £5,000 or £6,000, and he will have options. The people who bought the falling knife will not.